Welcome back everybody, my name's Nick930 and this is my review for the recently released Control. Control is a third-person action-adventure game developed by Remedy Entertainment, the same developers responsible for Quantum Break, Alan Wake, and the original Max Payne games. And this is important to understand because Control appears to take inspiration from practically every single one of those games, building off of the well-crafted third-person shooting mechanics and solid narrative, while also expanding upon them with a unique setting and new RPG-like elements. So first, let's talk about the narrative experience. Now, if you're familiar with Remedy's past work, you'll likely already know what to expect going into Control. Many familiar plot elements like paranormal enemies, the dark atmosphere, and sense of isolation exist just as you would expect, though the delivery of this experience is a bit more open-ended than usual. You play as Jessie, the new director of a large agency headquarters building called the Oldest House, and are tasked with securing the strange, shape-shifting offices from a mysterious paranormal threat called the Hiss. As you explore the dark offices of the FBC headquarters, you'll meet various human allies, who will generally brief you on immediate threats, and task you with clearing out sectors of the building and recovering strange artifacts called Objects of Power. But Jessie's own personal goal is to locate her missing brother named Dylan, who she believes the FBC has detained after an incident during their childhood that resulted in her receiving her magical powers. The narrative is certainly unique, though I do feel as though it isn't nearly as well thought out as Remedy's past stories. Many of the scenes where Jessie speaks to other characters seem like they were initially designed around choosing your own dialogue paths. You can hear Jessie thinking out loud about whether she should provide personal information during encounters, but instead of giving players the opportunity to decide, she just goes ahead and does it for herself. And even then, these dialogue scenes are rare in the grand scheme of things. Most of the time, you'll be exploring different sectors of this office building, restoring power and uncovering mysterious objects of power, with the occasional document and audio recording helping to piece together the events and explain how the entire situation ended up happening. It's overall a far more subtle approach to storytelling than what Remedy's done in the past, and it's quite possible that the more open-ended gameplay approach is the key reason for this change. Control is a third-person shooter game, where players will need to explore a large open-ended office building, clear out enemies, and unlock new, powerful abilities. The main objectives often require you to travel to large sections of the building, like the maintenance area or research department, and clear out the invading Hiss enemies that have set up control points there. What's strange though is that Control doesn't provide much guidance to the player. You can see on an easily accessible map where you are in relation to the next objective, but there aren't any in-game waypoints to help guide you through the maze-like structures. Now obviously this could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how much you want to get immersed in the experience, as waypoints tend to push players away from exploring and cause them to take a more direct path. So this really just boils down to preference. But I did feel as though I was frequently getting lost, especially when trying to discover optional mission paths. These optional missions provide opportunities to discover more of the game world, while also occasionally providing critical upgrades to the player, including new powerful abilities and valuable resources in order to craft more weapon upgrades. Most of these missions are fun to complete, however there are a few that seem a bit uninspired. Again, these are entirely optional, and they often reward the player with valuable loot, but I do wish they didn't just reuse sections of the game world and throw in typical open world quest objectives. But even the most mundane mission objectives are enjoyable thanks to Control's excellent combination of smooth gunplay and powerful abilities. Blasting enemies away with a crazy shape-shifting gun and then seamlessly swapping to throwing a massive piece of debris feels intuitive and makes Control's gameplay some of the most solid of any game Remedy has ever made. At the start, players are equipped with a weird blocky gun called the Service Weapon. This gun starts out as a simple handgun, but if the player collects enough resources, they can upgrade the gun so that it can transform into other variations. Other variants include a shotgun, a beam rifle, and a sort of rapid-fire machine gun. Only 2 variants can be equipped at any one time, but players can easily switch between them in the menu, and can swap between the equipped variants seamlessly during combat. The service weapon also benefits from not requiring any type of ammunition to operate, and instead functions like the blasters in Star Wars Battlefront, and requires a cooldown after long sustained fire. On top of the service weapon, players can also unlock powerful abilities, allowing Jessie to quickly dodge, fly, force throw objects, and even possess enemies to fight as allies. Powers are unlocked throughout the game by discovering objects of power, and the game does a great job providing a basic tutorial section after each unlocked power to help explain how they work. The enemies, referred to as the Hiss, provide the perfect opportunity to test the player's understanding of all the available tools. Enemies include standard grunts, shielded troopers, heavy soldiers, and even more unnatural looking creatures like healing orbs, suicidal exploding monsters, and the occasional challenging boss. Enemies feature standard health bars, with the more challenging enemies being represented by a numeric value next to their health, requiring players to level up if they want to stand a chance. The player's health is also represented by a health bar, and can only be filled by either accessing a control point or collecting blue particles on the ground around defeated enemies, forcing a more direct approach to combat. Between all this action, players can also spend collected resources on several different types of upgrades. Players can equip their service weapon variants with different types of modifications, providing things like increased power and rate of fire, but can also modify themselves with things like improved health and energy. After securing a control point, players can access even more upgrade menus, including the weapon crafting menu and a player skill tree, with improvements to overall health, energy, and powers. This balance between unlocking new powers, upgrading the service weapon, and equipping modifications makes Control's gameplay feel incredibly rewarding. And as players complete more objectives and discover higher level security cards, more of the office becomes accessible, providing more challenging groups of enemies, some basic platforming, and even a fair bit of puzzle solving. Visually, Control is an impressive looking game. Despite the seemingly boring, mundane setting of an office complex, Control's world feels surprisingly fresh thanks to its smart use of complex geometric structural design, subtle but confident color configuration, beautiful lighting effects, and some of the very best real-time physics I've seen in a long time. Practically everything in the world of Control can be destroyed, at least partially, and the debris from that destruction not only appears realistically scattered across the ground, but can even be interacted with thanks to Jesse's force-throwing abilities. Huge chunks of concrete can be ripped out of the ground and thrown at enemies, and as it makes contact, pieces will splinter off and realistically cascade down at the point of impact. Rooms filled with office chairs, desks, and equipment can be destroyed within seconds, not only providing an impressive-looking scene, but also really pushing high-end CPUs to their limits. And then, of course, there's Control's RTX-based ray tracing effects that allow for real-time reflections throughout its environment at the cost of solid performance. Control's presentation feels incredibly well polished with very few technical issues throughout. The only problems I ran into included a bug with the over-the-shoulder camera where Jessie would center herself incorrectly, blocking my view, and some minor, rare AI bugs that only seem to manifest themselves after incorrectly using the possess power. Overall, Control is a superb action-adventure game, with an addictive gameplay formula and impressive visual presentation that kept me wanting to keep coming back for more. The FBC headquarters, while a seemingly boring setting for a whole video game, offers an incredible sandbox to play around with the shape-shifting service weapon, Jesse's crazy Jedi-like powers, and the incredible physics engine. However, for those of you hoping for a story along the lines of Alan Wake or Quantum Break, you may be a bit disappointed, as Control seems to favor the more open-ended narrative approach synonymous with open-world video games, rather than the structured, linear approach of their older projects. But what do you guys think? Do you prefer the more gameplay-centric design of Control, or were you hoping for a more structured story? Let me know in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos posted every week.